On November the 19th in 2016 at NXT Takeover Toronto, Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano climbed to the top of the mountain as DIY by defeating the Revival in a 2 out of 3 falls Tag Team Classic for the NXT Tag Team Championships. It was 12 years in the making for the two best friends, but best friends make even better enemies. Unfortunately, DIY's first NXT Tag Team title reign did not last long. Ciampa and Gargano were defeated by the Authors of Pain at NXT Takeover San Antonio and failed to win back their championships at the following takeover in Orlando. However, DIY were presented with one more opportunity to challenge the Authors of Pain in a ladder match at Takeover Chicago, but once again, Gargano and Ciampa fell short. The show seemed like it would go off the air with DIY standing together at the top of the ramp, acknowledging the crowd's show of respect, but before that could happen, Ciampa looked at Gargano and whispered, "This wasn't our moment, this is my moment." Ciampa grabbed Gargano and launched him into the Titantron to initiate a vicious attack. Ciampa instantly garnered nuclear heat from a furious crowd as the fans went as far as to chant, "F you Ciampa." The assault came to an end after Tommaso nailed Johnny with an air raid crash from the stage down onto a table below. Gargano was stretchered out of the building and DIY had well and truly come to an end. 2 weeks later on NXT, a visibly injured Tommaso Ciampa came out to the ring and announced that on the Thursday before Takeover Chicago he had suffered a knee injury, later confirmed as a torn ACL, which would keep him out of action for many months. Ciampa spoke of his suspicions on how Johnny Gargano and the fans were quickly considering other potential dream partners to team with Gargano for the tag team ladder match, thus treating Ciampa as an afterthought. Ciampa's suspicion only increased once the match was over and proceeded to remind Gargano and the fans that Tommaso Ciampa is not an afterthought and is not replaceable. He promised to remind everyone of this again once he returned. At NXT Takeover Philadelphia, the reminder came. After a losing effort to Andrade in an NXT Championship match, Gargano stood at the top of the ramp with his wife, Candice LeRae. Tommaso Ciampa rushed out onto the stage and nailed his former friend across the back with a crutch. The Psycho Killer was still not at 100%, but he sure as hell signalled that he would be returning very soon. On the February 7th edition of NXT, Zelina Vega granted Johnny one more chance to win the NXT Championship, but if he was to lose to Andrade again, he would have to leave NXT for good. Gargano was on the cusp of defeating Andrade with the Gargano escape, but the referee had been knocked down, which gave Tommaso Ciampa the opportunity to plague Johnny Gargano once again. For a second time, Ciampa smashed Gargano over the back with his crutch. Andrade followed up with a hammerlock DDT, the referee recovered and counted the 1, 2, 3. Johnny Gargano was forced to leave NXT and was waved out of the building by Ciampa. Over the next 4 weeks, Ciampa would come out to the ring to cut a promo, but every time he would lift the microphone to his mouth, the crowd overwhelmed him with boos and chants of Johnny wrestling. This angered Ciampa to the point where he would snatch Gargano signs from the fans and rip them up while shouting "He's gone" in their faces. Eventually, Ciampa snatched a sign away to reveal Johnny Gargano as its holder. Gargano jumped the guardrail and exacted a small measure of revenge on his former tag team partner before security could pull him off. William Regal soon informed Ciampa that if he wanted Gargano gone for good, he would have to face him in a non-sanctioned match at NXT Takeover New Orleans. However, if Gargano was to win, he would be reinstated as a member of the NXT roster. The final episode of NXT featured an incredible hype package, detailing the build-up to how one of the most historic feuds in WWE history begins. What's up, wrestling fans? My name is Aaron, your analytical assassin, and this is Wrestling by Waldridge. And welcome to Season 2, Chapter 1 of Under Analysis. In today's episode, I will be taking a look at the non-sanctioned match between Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa from NXT Takeover New Orleans. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. It's great to have you, and if you're returning, it's wonderful to see you again. So, if you're unfamiliar with Under Analysis, it's a show where I take matchups from different eras and different promotions. I go over the build to the match as you saw at the start of this video. I then recap and analyse the match itself before I give a post-match breakdown complete with a unique match rating. If you missed the first season of Under Analysis, then make sure you check out each and every episode, all of which will be in the description down below. As always, if you enjoy this video, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, hit the notification bell, all of that good stuff to help the channel grow. Make sure to stick around to the end of this video as well, where I will be giving a sneak peek for Chapter 2. Tommaso Ciampa makes his way to the ring first to a theme song full of boos and chants of arsehole, but the audience soon changes its tune when Johnny Gargano's Rebel Heart hits. Gargano is absolutely fixated on Ciampa from when he appears on the stage up until when the bell rings. The anger is visibly building up inside of both men, and it's released when the pair collide in a flurry of fists. Gargano initially gets the better of Ciampa and nails him with a slingshot spear, before he relentlessly stomps away at Ciampa in the corner. Gargano is breathing fire. Ronaldo calls it a fight, and he is not wrong. Awesome opening segment which immediately tells you that this is a very personal grudge match. Gargano knocks Ciampa to the outside with a clothesline and follows up with a tope suicida. The Sicilian psychopath attempts to fight back, but Gargano sends him over the guardrail into the crowd. Gargano then throws caution to the wind by wiping Ciampa out with an awesome dive over the guardrail. However, Ciampa does eventually manage to counter Gargano and proceeds to plant him onto the guardrail with a front-facing suplex. Tommaso then repeatedly wails away on Gargano's back with his fists in very aggressive fashion. The facial expressions used by both men have been nothing short of fantastic so far. The level of hatred between the two former friends is very clear to see. Ciampa begins to target Gargano's back with a backbreaker before he exposes the hard floor beneath the protective mats at ringside. Ciampa has some bad intentions in mind. Ciampa attempts a suplex onto the concrete, but Gargano luckily wriggles free, and then catapults Ciampa over the announce table and into the commentators. Mamma mia! Gargano lifts Ciampa onto the table and looks to hit a freaking powerbomb, but Ciampa counters it and executes a massive suplex from the table. Gargano lands hard onto the floor with a sickening thud. A fantastic spot which is sold wonderfully by both wrestlers. And one violent spot leads into another, as Ciampa leans the cover of the broadcast table against it before he nails Johnny with a back suplex onto it. Great psychology by Ciampa to attack Gargano's back, as it hampers Gargano's mobility and also sets up for two of Ciampa's finishers in the Air Raid Crash and Project Ciampa. The crowd chants "F you Ciampa" as he just sits down on top of the table, laughing sadistically. Ciampa rolls Gargano back into the ring and resumes his brutal assault with stomps and closed fist shots, whilst looking like, well, a psychopath. Gargano continuously looks to fight back, but this time Ciampa beautifully counters a clothesline into another back suplex. He covers, but Gargano remains defiant and kicks out at one. Continuing his work to Johnny's back, Ciampa then applies a cloverleaf. Excellent choice of submission there. Gargano does manage to break the hold by leveraging himself halfway over the ring apron, but Ciampa just stands up and boots Gargano in the back of the neck again and again and again, before he mocks the crowd and we see the birth of Ciampa's infamous clapping taunt. There has been a couple of occasions in this match when the pace has slowed right down and it may have seemed like the crowd would lose interest, but each time this has threatened to happen, Ciampa just brings that level of violence straight back up again. Ciampa hits Gargano with a running knee lift and then stalks over to an injured fan in the crowd. The evil Ciampa then steals the fan's crutches, an extremely relevant weapon for Ciampa. We then see a money shot of Ciampa holding the crutches in one hand whilst waving goodbye at Johnny with the other. This was a fantastic way to develop the story of the match and put even more heat on Ciampa. Ciampa slowly re-enters the ring and lifts a vulnerable Gargano, who has been selling his bloody ass off, by the way, with a crutch. Ciampa swings it at Gargano's head. Gargano avoids it. He swings it at his midsection, but Gargano avoids again. Gargano counters with 2 shots to the head and Ciampa drops the crutch. Gargano goes to pick it up, but he gets kicked in the face by Ciampa. Ciampa swings the crutch at Johnny again, but he's countered and knocked onto the ring apron with a rolling kick. Ciampa quickly recovers and attempts to suplex Gargano over the top rope and onto the exposed concrete, but Gargano counters and goes for the one final beat DDT. So Ciampa counters and goes for an air raid crash, but Gargano counters one more time for a devastating sunset powerbomb, which sends Ciampa crashing down onto the concrete. The crowd goes wild and chants, "You deserve it." Spot of the match for me, and kudos to Ciampa for taking that bump. Both men make it back into the ring in opposite corners, either side of the crutch, which is in the middle of the ring. And after a brief tug of war, Gargano finds himself holding the weapon which has been haunting him for months. Ciampa closes his eyes in anguish before he charges, but he's met with multiple crutch shots from a very vengeful Gargano. This is phenomenal storytelling. It is great to see Ciampa finally get his comeuppance from Johnny, and with a crutch no less. It's also worth noting that Gargano's last crutch shot was to Ciampa's surgically repaired knee. A lovely piece of logical psychology there from Gargano. Gargano gives Ciampa enough time to recuperate, and his next crutch shot is reversed, which sends Gargano to the outside of the ring, but a befuddled Ciampa finds himself draped over the second rope. So Gargano responds with another hard crutch shot to the back of Ciampa's neck. We see a one final beat DDT, cover, 1, 2, Ciampa kicks out. Matching Ciampa's desire for violence, Gargano then exposes a second rope turnbuckle and tries to lawn dart Ciampa into it, but the Blackheart escapes. Gargano is placed on the ring apron, who attempts a second slingshot spear, but Ciampa sees it coming and simply knees his rival in the face. Ciampa then follows up with an amazing looking spinning powerbomb for the cover, but Johnny gets his shoulder up before the 3. The match is definitely nearing the end game now, as we start to see more and more close near falls. I also think the announcers have done a great job of emphasizing Gargano's peril in terms of how he is only ever 3 seconds away from losing his NXT career. We're then treated to another epic wrinkle in this story as Ciampa backs into a corner and slowly lifts his hands to signal DIY's old finisher, meet in the middle. Ciampa nails Gargano with a running knee and covers, but Gargano still has fight in him. There is then a lightning quick sequence of maneuvers featuring several counters, multiple open palm strikes, a slightly botched poison rana, all of which leads into the Gargano escape. Ciampa looks to use the bottom rope as a means to break the hold, but Gargano maneuvers both of them back into the middle of the ring. It looks as if Ciampa might tap out, but instead he desperately rakes at Gargano's eyes. The level of drama has really picked up in the last 5 minutes. Ciampa and Gargano trade close fists with one another on unsteady feet. Gargano is getting the better of his adversary until Ciampa nails Gargano with a low blow. Great heel work from Ciampa. He picks up the crutch, cracks Gargano over the back with it, and follows up with a Project Ciampa lung blower. Tommaso covers, but Johnny kicks out again. There was a great call by McGuinness here as well, who claimed that Ciampa was making a statement of intent with that move. A move which he used before DIY in his singles career. Ciampa is shaking his head in disbelief at Gargano's resilience. He reminds Johnny that this is his moment, but Johnny just slaps him in the face, and after a brief tussle, successfully hits Ciampa with a lawn dart to the exposed turnbuckle. Gargano grabs Ciampa by the chin and signals to watch him. This time it's Gargano's turn to raise his hands and call for meet in the middle. Gargano hits a wicked super kick, covers, 1, 2, Ciampa kicks out. What a bloody near fall. So many epic story beats in this match where Ciampa has reaped what he's sewing. Gargano gingerly climbs to the top rope, which gives Ciampa enough time to join him. Johnny goes for a Frankensteiner after escaping a potential air raid crash from the top rope, but at the last second, Ciampa counters it into an avalanche Project Ciampa. He covers, but Gargano somehow kicks out. Ciampa removes his knee brace as it looks like the move might have caused more damage to his injured knee. However, this proves to be a bad move from Ciampa as he goes for an exposed running knee, but Gargano grabs the brace and smashes it into Ciampa's leg. A furious Gargano then finds the crutch and breaks it in half. He charges at Ciampa with it, but he hesitates at the last second. Ciampa is cowering beneath him, and it looks as if he's trying to apologise to Gargano. Johnny mouths "Why" at Ciampa and takes a seat next to him, but it's all a ruse as Ciampa picks up the knee brace, swings it at Johnny's head, Johnny ducks and then applies the Gargano escape. Ciampa desperately tries to reach for the brace, so Gargano transitions into an STF, grabs the brace, pulls it across Ciampa's face, and Tommaso Ciampa taps out. Johnny Gargano wins the match and is reinstated to the NXT roster. Any wrestling match is capable of telling a great story, but when we see storytelling in a match such as this one, which has a strong emotional hook, you know you're likely to see something very special. Seeing Gargano finally getting his hands on Ciampa was absolutely fantastic. It was something the fans have been waiting for almost a year. The facial expressions and character work were unbelievably good. Johnny Gargano is the quintessential babyface, easy to get behind, whilst the despicable actions of an unhinged Ciampa made you desperately want to see him get his comeuppance. That moment when Gargano finally got his hands on the crutch, a weapon which had cost him dearly, was awesome. I loved all of the callbacks to DIY, commentary was on point, the significance of the crutch and the knee brace, which were the only weapons used in the match, very clever, and the finish was the icing on the cake. A poetic finish which refers back to the injury which caused Ciampa to turn on his best friend. The knee brace signified the injury, but in the end it was the knee brace that helped Gargano to get his job back. It was an incredible way to round off the story of the match. Likewise, the psychology in this match was just as good as the storytelling. I mentioned before how Ciampa's work to Gargano's back made a lot of sense because it sets up for his finishes. Well, allow me to expand upon that even more. In the build up to this match, Gargano had twice cracked Gargano over the back with the crutch. So before their contest at New Orleans had even started, Ciampa had already built the foundations for his strategy. Ciampa simply continued where he left off. The match lived up to its non-sanctioned stipulation, and I thought Ciampa made good on his promise to try and rid NXT of Gargano for good with actions such as exposing the concrete floor and his general level of violence. Ciampa's heel psychology was great too, the eye rake and the low blow to get out of sticky situations, and of course his feigned cowering before charging Gargano just before the finish. Gargano's selling cannot be understated either. He took a lot of punishment, but he made sure you knew just how much. There were some heavy spots in this match, but the wrestlers did an excellent job of selling. As for the work rate, obviously it was awesome. You have to remember that Ciampa had not wrestled since the tag team ladder match at NXT Takeover Chicago almost a year ago, but he did not miss a beat here. Ciampa was as intense as ever. Considering this was an unsanctioned match, you would probably expect to see more of a street fight as opposed to a wrestling clinic. However, I thought this match was perfectly balanced. There were moments in the match such as when the action spilled into the crowd or when weapons were used, but there was also some excellent wrestling to be had too. The counter wrestling especially. Gargano and Ciampa know each other extremely well, so a plethora of reversals was a strong likelihood. There was a nice mix of technical work, strong style, high impact offense and high risk offense, and with the exception of one slightly botched Poison Rana, everything was executed perfectly. Now I don't think anyone expected that Gargano would leave NXT for good, so whilst a win for Gargano was predictable, it did not hamper the overall excitement for this match in any way, and I think that's because of how invested we were in the story between Ciampa and Gargano. We were probably supposed to get this match at TakeOver Brooklyn 3, but because of Ciampa's injury we had to wait so the anticipation for this match was at an all-time high. Despite the lack of near falls in the first half of this match, constant teasing of someone taking a bump on the exposed floor or someone being hit with a crutch helped to keep this match dramatic. We saw some very exciting spots which helped to get the crowd on their feet, whether it was the suplex from the announce table or the Avalanche Project Ciampa, or even cool moments like when Gargano and Ciampa called for the meet in the middle finisher. The near falls we did get towards the end of the match were terrific. I would not even blame anyone for believing that for just 1 second Ciampa might have won. And the structure of this match was bloody brilliant. It had a clear intro, middle and end. The match starts with Gargano receiving the shine by finally getting his hands on Ciampa. Ciampa then gets himself into the match and works the heat. Comeback by Gargano, which is temporarily thwarted by Ciampa. Another big comeback from Gargano, which leads into a finale full of close near falls and the finish. The pacing fluctuated nicely throughout the match. As I mentioned before, there were a couple of moments where the pacing dropped to the point where the crowd could have lost interest, but the intensity and the character work ensured that that never happened. The spots were spread out and not too numerous. The finish was very satisfying, and even though this match lasted for a lengthy 37 minutes, I do not think it needed to be shorter. It was all story and zero filler. It's an easy 5-star rating for each element across the board. But be sure to let me know what ratings you would give this match in the comment section down below. Also let me know if you've enjoyed this video. You know I love to make these. Please remember to hit that subscribe button. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at WrestlingByW. Give the video a share, air raid crash that like button, and give the notification bell a one final beat DDT to be notified when I release new videos on the channel. I hope you all have great days guys, and I shall see you all for the next one. Bye bye.